Zombies has always had a fascinating history when it comes to the release of its iconic maps. There are the timeless classics that capture the hearts of players everywhere, like Mob of the Dead and Origins, while on the other hand, there may have been more divisive maps, such as Shangri-La and Call of the Dead. However, Call of Duty has always been meticulous in its approach to map creation. Before crafting a new experience, the development team takes careful steps to ensure they fully understand what needs to be brought to life. Often, they send team members to real-world locations for inspiration, allowing them to gain a deeper understanding of the setting and its elements before transforming it into something extraordinary. Enter Griffin Castle. Inspired by the stunning Hohenwerfen Castle in Austria, let's just say this map set a standard for future Call of Duty zombie maps. Fortress Hohenwerfen is majestically enthroned on the rock high above the Saljak Valley. Birds of prey circle around its towers, and anyone who steps through the mighty walls enters another world. It's no wonder that the 900-year-old fortified castle just outside the city of Zalburg is a popular family excursion destination. After all, there is plenty to experience and discover at the Pongu Castle complex. Here you can experience the Middle Ages with all your senses. By the way, I will be referring to Der Eisendrache as DE, just a note for those who are unfamiliar with some of the Call of Duty lingo. With that being said, back in 2016, when DE released as the first DLC for Black Ops 3, this map did more than just exceeded expectations. It set a standard for upcoming DLCs, which is a double-edged sword obviously. DE proved that Treyarch not only had the ability to craft a map brimming with personality at every turn, but also created an experience so captivating that players would be eager to return to it nearly a decade later. The beauty of this map, in my opinion, could not be explained with words, and I know I said this with the previous map, Shadows of Evil, but Treyarch during this age or era knew what they wanted to create. A clear vision was driven by passion, desire, and excitement. You could feel the sense of passion as you indulge yourself into the map, feeling the scenery take place and immerse yourself into something a bit old-schooled. This fortress truly is remarkable in numerous ways. The architecture of each building, along with the minor details for transitioning from one area to another, it really is incredible how inspiration can be put into fruition with the proper ideas put in place. One of the things I find most fascinating at first glance is how they switched up the scenic view from where the original in real life fortress is taking place to the in-game fortress. From looking down at the city below to a giant robot in Winter Town now sitting below the fortress is just so beautiful. Creating a winter-like atmosphere in games can be quite a challenge as well. There are so many emotions with the season, and as someone who lives in Canada and half the year is winter, I can confidently tell you that DE without a doubt creates a strong, bold, and immersive winter-like atmosphere. A proper way to explain it as well is a dead winter. Nothing somber or sweet about it, it's just all death, which is well suited for a mode like zombies and synergizes with the serious tone the story partakes in. Zombies can usually stick with its bland color palette of grays and browns, but in a map like this, it works quite lovely and really pushes other areas to stand out even more. A fine example of this is the Undercroft. Now, this area isn't the best for training zombies, but does a well-rounded job for compensating the bland color palette with the pyramid or the blue panels on the walls you can activate. And by the way, did you know that if you press all these square panels within the zero gravity time, you can unlock the BRM LMG as a wall buy? Just make sure you aren't doing this in the middle of a round, or else the zombies might catch up to you. Another standout aspect of DE is how its atmosphere shifts through the design of its spaces, moving you from the haunting stillness of a dead winter landscape into the warmth and quiet melancholy of dimly lit laboratories and rooms. You could sit in comfort here, having nothing to worry about. Maybe you'd want to stare at the paintings or see what the people are reading in their spare time. These interior spaces offer a warm and inviting atmosphere that draws players in. A nice shift in tone which can bring players a refreshing taste within a map. But these spaces wouldn't be the way they are due to the actual architecture of the building themselves. Back in the day before modern military technology was more technical and advanced, castles and fortresses served as great defense mechanisms. This is especially significant dependent on the type of castle being built. Looking through some simple architectural history, a castle like DE, which was inspired directly from the Hohenwürfen castle, was classified as a concentric castle. In simpler terms, a castle in a castle. The outer separate walls, which would be the main defender against opposing enemies, while the main castle would stay secured within the middle. Looking at the exterior of the fortress, you can get a clear idea and understanding of this term. Have you ever wondered what these pointed towers were called within castles or fortresses? These are spires, which are meant to be narrow and difficult for several people to climb their staircases if enemies were to launch an attack. The clockwise direction is thought to have given right-handed defenders an advantage in combat by making it more difficult for attackers to draw and swing their weapons efficiently on the inner wall. As you may know in DE, I am talking about the clock tower in this case, which not only holds the arrow for the firebow, but can be activated and turned on with the DG4s. Another side Easter egg which is far more difficult to complete if playing solo. It's by landing the clock on the hour hand, while the minute hand lands on 15, which then grants you access to the teleporter so you can get the plunger, a weapon that has the chance to temporarily one-shot the Panzer Soldats. Enormous castles such as these usually build off of the landscapes as well at times. And just under the clock tower you can head to this summoning room and see that when you're making your way to the starting room where the gondola is, the path leading down along with the cliffside is another means of defense to make it harder for outsiders to invade the perimeters. Even as we get to the more newer and futuristic parts of the map, such as the rocket launch site, there was still tons of love and effort put into this. It really is amazing how the immersion can be kept together so strongly as we progress from the medieval fortress to rocket site. But with that being said, there really isn't much to say or analyze within this part of the map, except for the rocket. But trust me, I'm no rocket scientist, so there isn't really much for me to go into detail here. The rocket we see take place within DE and at the ending of the Easter egg are more than likely V2 rockets, which were most common during World War II era in 1939 to 1945. These rockets weren't necessarily rockets, but were actually guided missiles, since this is what the Nazis developed during their time. The single-stage ballistic missiles were able to travel at such incredible speeds that once they were able to break impact on solid ground or territories, there wouldn't even be an indicator until after the initial explosion, which then basically means you're done. Another reason to partake in my theory that these were V2 rockets were also the shape of the fins at the bottom, which closely resembled the ones during the time they were being manufactured in World War II. And just to clear things up further, rockets hold people while missiles don't. There isn't a cockpit or a designated area for users to sit into, and after the guided missile launch, two gyroscopes inside of them would help bring it to its destination. One would stabilize the missile while the other would steer in the proper direction for the coordinates it was assigned to. The V2 missile used liquid fuel and oxidizer to propel itself. It carried 3,800 kilograms of 75% ethanol and 25% water, along with 4,900 kilograms of liquid oxygen for a total propellant mass of 8,700 kilograms. The V2 also carried a payload of 725 kilograms of high explosive, and since there were about 3,000 of these missiles built, and let's just say for number purposes there were 3,000 built exactly, that's about 26,160,000 kilograms of propelled mass used in total, along with 2,175,000 kilograms of explosives which were used. And if you were super curious at this point, an estimated of 9,000 civilians and military personnel died from the impacts of these missiles, while a further 12,000 laborers and concentration camp prisoners died as a result of their forced participation in the production of these mass weapons. Well, the more you know, right? Anyways, just to collect ourselves for a moment and focus back on DE, the scenery and atmosphere of this map has so much to offer and will always be a classic within the hearts of many players. The odd mix and proper balance of medieval and futuristic really stands strong, as Treyarch put all their effort towards creating this masterful map. The bows are iconic in Black Ops 3 history. They left an impact on players, and even those who are die-hard Origin fans left a powerful first impression. 4 powerful elemental weapons, each distinct, set a standard that's still referenced today whenever a map features 4 elemental variants. Comparing them is like rust to gold. It's impossible not to. With that being said, I'm going to have some fun with some of the backstories for 3 of the elemental bows, since I couldn't really find anything on YouTube or the Call of Duty wiki page when it came to the backstories or origins of the bows. Let me know your thoughts if I should do this in a future video about a map. Buried deep within the castle's ancient walls lays a shattered arrow. Forged from the fiercest storms mankind had ever witnessed, it was never meant to be held by mortal hands again. That is, until the Primus crew stepped foot within the fortress. By activating the weather vane, they unknowingly awakened a silent, long-dormant power. To fully unleash this legendary storm, they were tasked with igniting 3 hidden flames beyond the castle's borders, a spark that would set into motion something far more dangerous than they could anticipate. Deep beneath the fortress, glowing blue elemental panels pulsed with ancient energy. They whispered of a power still incomplete, still yearning to return. Binding their arrows with bolts of lightning, the crew fired upon the flames, each shot echoing like thunder across the halls. The winds began to howl, screaming from the depths, warning that the storm's return was imminent. The once broken arrow was placed at the eye of the tempest, reforged into its original catastrophic form, a weapon of such destruction force that neither the living nor the dead could hope to tame it. Sealed away from humanity, a shattered arrow lay hidden, once wielded by terrifying beings known only as the Keepers. Legend speaks of an eternal hunger that lurks within a portal to an unknown realm. Should it ever be reopened, that hunger would be impossible to satisfy. But, whether by fate or sheer coincidence, the Primus crew stumbles upon the arrow concealed within the very bricks of the fortress. As they disturb its resting place, an unfamiliar, demonic voice whispers through their subconscious. The crew embarks on a grim mission to recover 6 hidden Keeper skulls scattered throughout the fortress. Upon returning them, the voice still hungers.
The broken souls must be sacrificed in my honor.
In the midst of relentless combat, 6 undead are offered to the demon. As the dormant skulls awaken, they feast upon the flesh of the fallen, an unspeakable horror that burns itself into memory. Yet this is not enough. The voice speaks once more. Cloaked in riddles, urging the crew to discover its true name. Upon returning with the sacred crest, the demon finally falls silent.
That is my name.
In a flash, the shattered arrow is engulfed by the power within the vase. Reforged into its purest and most demonic form, now imbued with the power to summon ravenous skulls from another realm. The arrow becomes a weapon of unending gluttony, forever feeding, never sated, as it consumes the dead again and again. Forged within the heart of a star, a once immense power was locked away dormant for thousands of years, hidden from the grasp of humanity never meant to return. But fate had other plans. One day, mortal hands uncovered the shattered remains of the arrow, buried deep within the top of the clock tower. Unknowingly reignited a spark long extinguished, awakened a lost star to burn once more. Within a nearby facility, a rocket test unleashed immense heat, striking a smoldering shard from the ancient star primed to release the energy it had held for a millennia. As the crew battled relentless waves of the damned, each ritual site was fed, and the arrow pulsed with new energy. Yet, it was not complete. The arrow required the eternal flame, a sacred blaze capable of reforging it into its destined form. Hidden away, the flame was eventually discovered, and in that moment, the sun itself seemed to call out, yearning for reunion. When the arrow was finally brought before the awakened sun, the two forces became one. Fully reformed, the arrow now surged with celestial energy, its true form restored. A weapon never meant to return had been reborn, its power unleashed once more to aid in the eternal war against the Keepers. The Wolf King was born sometime before 1292. Not much is known about the Wolf King's past except that he had somewhat befriended 2 wolves that fought alongside him in battle. However, the Wolf King and his army assembled to fight the Apothegans alongside the Keepers and Primus. The Wolf King was present for the final day of the Great War, where Primus arrived to use the elemental staffs to defeat the Apothecan menace. In the end of the Great War, the Wolf King was instructed by the 4 knights to build a castle in a location they specified. Before Primus seemingly disappeared from history, sometime after the war, he raised a son, who he proceeded to tell stories regarding the Great War and the valiant 4 knights that he fought alongside with. At some point, many years after the Great War, the Wolf King died. The circumstances of his death are not clear. However, the paintings within DE show that the Wolf King has entered a battle with the wolves, followed by a painting showing an Apothecan monster in the sky shooting lightning, and a painting of his loyal servant Arthur grieving at the Wolf King's dead body. As the Wolf King died, he requested that his faithful servant Arthur scattered his remains under the site where his castle was built. Arthur was honored by the Wolf King's dying request and buried the bones in September 19th, 1318, only to be teleported by temporal rifts to buried in the following day. These bones will later be unearthed by Primus and one of the Wolf King's wolves as a spirit when obtaining the wolf bow. As much as I love the Easter eggs for DE as well, there isn't much for me to talk about that hasn't already been said by someone else. But something that is just as important as the main Easter eggs are the side Easter eggs. They are the cornerstone of the maps, by the way, and some of our most favorite memories were more than likely from a side Easter egg of the map you were playing. As I just mentioned, side Easter eggs always add more elements and personality in a map. Throughout this video, I have already mentioned a couple side Easter eggs, but I thought I would share some of the others since, in my mind, they also help set a standard for future titles to create a more engaging, creative, and replayable map. There has already been a history of side Easter eggs, and this isn't including ciphers or anything cryptic like that, but actual side Easter eggs that, once completed, can benefit the player in a variety of ways, whether that be gaining an extra perk, collecting an additional gobblegum, that sort of thing. There are certain side Easter eggs that are just confusing or meaningless, but unlike those, DE has some really fun and interesting ones you can complete throughout your game. I really recommend you try them once if you haven't already. The skeletons. The skeleton Easter egg is such a fun, quirky nod to switch things up. If you have in plain sight, you can activate it and shoot 3 floating heads laying around the map, and upon shooting the 3rd head, your zombie friends are now just skeletons. You could look deeper into this and possibly say this is an analogy or reference to the people who used to defend this castle 900 years ago. The soldiers and townfolks who would provide care and love to the inner facilities reanimated one last time to defend their home. The Panzer helmet. Now, this helmet can be a saving grace or the final straw. There are 3 Panzer claws hidden around the map. The first bullet that hits them will knock them into position, and the next will launch it whatever direction they're facing. But this can only be done once. After you launch the claw and it were to miss a panzer, you cannot get the helmet anymore. You must kill 3 panzers with the 3 claws. Then a helmet will automatically be attached to your player's head, which will decrease the damage you take from them. Don't get me wrong, this is great for completing the boss fight, since there are so many panzers chasing after you during particular phases of the fight, or using this helmet for high rounds, if done successfully. Something I would highly recommend players to get if they haven't done before, since it is a good challenge as well. There is this plant that you can pick up and gather inside of your inventory. Although you will need to progress through the Easter egg to complete this quest and get the rewards, it's nothing too complicated. Collect this plant for the first time when you go to the underground laboratory where the teleporter is located. And once you successfully teleport back in time to find your codes for the safe, make sure you place the plant back where you originally found it. Then once you return back to the present, you will find the plant lively, grown, and flourished. Interact with it once more and you'll be given a Gobblegum as a reward. Nothing too crazy for a Gobblegum, but it's better than nothing. Just make sure you're not holding a Gobblegum already since it will swap it out. The Drew Marlowe Easter egg. This one was really interesting and discovered a couple years after the launch of the map due to how specific this egg was. But here are the details. Progress, but do not pass round 2. Allow the zombies to break down all 5 barriers in the spawn room. Build exactly 2 boards into each of the 5 barriers. Purchase the RK5 off the wall. Build 2 more barriers onto each of the 5 barriers for a total of 4 boards. Then purchase the Shiva off the wall, replacing the RK5. Build 1 more board onto each of the 5 barriers for a total of 5 boards. Then purchase the RK5 off the wall again, replacing the Shiva. Return and purchase the door which leads out of the spawn room toward the KRM, and look toward the outside of the map within 5 seconds of the last RK5 purchase. If done correctly, a heart-shaped frame will spawn off the side of the map with a picture of Drew Marlowe and his wife and son. Side Easter eggs overall are just so important within maps. They add that extra layer of replayability. Even something as simple as an Easter egg song are able to return players to a particular map so they can listen and relive an experience. As I mentioned before, most of these side Easter eggs don't overpower the player. They just give a little boost or pick-me-up in gameplay. Something such as these skeletons are more or less meant as a visual change, which can be refreshing if you're sick of looking at zombies all the time. There are other side Easter eggs as well I didn't mention, but take the time to explore and figure out other ones yourself. With all this being said and done, what are your thoughts about a map like DE? Do you think Call of Duty should look back at something like this and create other maps not too similar in taste, but actual quality, since there are countless elements of replayability in this map? I can't believe how, after almost 10 years, something like DE cannot be rivaled against. It's just another way of Black Ops 3 showing how well diverse and amazing these releases were at the time and still to this day. Maybe some point in the future, there may be a reimagining of the map to possibly make it look even better with a newer, more updated graphics engine. But even then, I know personally, I'm happy with what we received, and I can't complain. I just wanted to say thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I spent a ton of time not only doing research, but writing as fancy as possible and very scenic. I really do enjoy making these kind of videos, but it does take a long time, and any support is always appreciated. I hope you're all having a fantastic day or night, depending on where you are, and taking care of yourselves. I hope to see you guys soon, and thank you again for watching.